So there we are. That was the National Audit Office saying about the errors, the misstatements. Now, I've got here the accounts for 2022 and 2023 from the National Audit Office about the Child Maintenance Service. And when you read it, it's quite extraordinary. There is what's called an adverse accounting opinion, which basically means it can't be signed off as a true and fair record. Just listen to this. And I think we've got this on the screen. The aggregate total outstanding maintenance arrears balance is £196 million. Absolutely extraordinary. As at March 23, these balances are misstated as a result of a number of factors, most significantly due to errors in the historic underlying assessment calculations and adjustments to arrears balances in preparing this accounts that makes further errors likely. Now, I mean, that is really significant, £196 million. The consequences of that, individual cases will, of course, vary. Some might be small, some might be very large. But if individuals actually are constantly faced with arrears, errors that are way too high, then the tension, the pressure, the inability to pay when it's directly taken out of your wage packet is huge. And I'm joined in the studio by two people who've had family members who've tragically taken their own lives because of the pressures from these arrears from the Child Maintenance Service. Jo Smith and Ian Briggs, welcome to the studio. In a sense, with the greatest respect, I'd rather we weren't having this discussion because, Jo, you lost your brother, Johnny, and Ian, you lost your son, Gavin. Can we just talk, Jo, to you first? About Johnny, just the circumstances, sort of what happened, first of all, and then what you'd like to see learn from this.
OK. He's struggled for years with the Child Maintenance Service. You can see throughout his records, his transcripts that we were lucky enough to get hold of, how frustrated he was. I think where it all started to go wrong was when it changed from the Child Support Agency over to the Child Maintenance Service. So he had a private arrangement in place to start with, where he paid cash. Evidence of that, a phone call that the CSA held, was lost when it went over to the Child Maintenance Service. Now, he couldn't prove that that arrangement had been in place. And as I look back through the telephone records, he's constantly asked to provide proof that he's paid cash.
Yeah.
That's impossible to do. You can prove you've been to the bank at certain times, but you can't prove where it's gone. So there was that added arrears. Then, all of a sudden, I think it was £4,230 landed on his account that were arrears, which obviously then inflated his monthly payments. They were then retracted later down the line because the CMS said, oh, sorry, we put these on in error. And he questioned, well, where's that money that I've paid?
So he was challenging the numbers, questioning it, wasn't getting the right answers. And tragically, it became too much for Johnny. And
I think the calculations as well. So I think they did 3 assessments in 1 year. One was based when he had a lot of overtime after he'd been furloughed, and then that kind of projected his income for the next 12 months, which was way higher than what he was actually on.
So he, what would you like to see, Jo, as we talk about these issues? What would you like to see the lessons learned from the CMS?
I'd like people to be able to challenge and get through to the CMS. So they were taking illegally over 40% of my brother's wage.
So this point about the challenge, Ian, I think it's really significant. You tragically lost your son, Gavin. Just the circumstances of Gavin and the CMS.
So the first thing I knew about it was Gavin never came home on Wednesday, the 1st of July, 2020. We spent 3 days waiting to try and find him, and the police found his body on the evening of the 3rd of July. It wasn't until I started going through his paperwork that I knew why he took his own life. And in going through his paperwork, I discovered that he had dealings with the CMS. Now, the CMS assessed Gavin, and they carried out assessment on him. He was a trained mechanic, and he earned about £50,000 a year income.
And they over-assessed his income?
Yeah, the CMS inflated his income by 50%.
And coming back to Joe's point about the challenge, Ian, was he able to challenge this?
He challenged it. I know he challenged it twice, and the CMS wouldn't listen to him. So when he got the final third assessment, basically the CMS were going to be taking £2,669 off of Gavin a month in child maintenance, leaving him roughly about £150 a month to survive on.
And so it became tragically too much for Gavin. So what would you like to see sort of come out of this? Going into the new year, what's got to happen?
There's got to be a public inquiry into the CMS, the way it operates. It cannot carry on taking people's lives the way it does. Nobody should have to go through what I've gone through.
I know. I can hear the emotion in both of your voices.
And we know that we lose thousands of people a year. The statistics are out there that say we lose approximately 1,000 people a year to CMS, to suicides. As a paying parent, the mortality rate is 14% higher than the national average.
It's heartbreaking, and there's a serious issue about this challenge because, as I understand, if the Secretary of State issues a liability order to anybody, then actually that cannot be challenged, even if it's proven to be incorrect. Yeah. It can't be challenged in court.
No, they're not able to challenge the numbers in court.
Which seems completely against the sort of the rules of natural justice.
Yeah, there is no justice.
No.
You know, it's the judge is not allowed to see what calculations the CMS has carried out to enforce that liability order. So how can the judge make a fair statement, make a fair judgment on the liability order?
That just seems completely wrong to me. It seems just against all rules of natural justice. Look, again, thank you so much for sharing such a difficult, sensitive issue with us and our viewers. We will no doubt get lots of responses from viewers on this issue. After the break, we'll be in the news. I'll read out a statement from the Department of Work on pensions. In fact, I've just got it now. Child maintenance payments, they help around 160,000 children out of poverty. Each year, we continue to improve the CMS through automating simple processes and spending more time with the vulnerable customers. And CMS payments are calculated so they're reasonable and affordable for paying parents. Decisions can be appealed, they say. Well, that I don't think is always the case. So these are big, important issues. Hearing from Joe and from Ian, it can end up in absolute tragedy.